There are rumors that sound clumsy, and there are rumors that include documentation or at the very least assert the existence of documentation. One of those times is now. Online rumors claim that Jasmine Washington has made shocking allegations pertaining to Kirk Frost. Allegations that go well beyond rumors or adultery. She claims to have received long-term financial support as well as rent that has supposedly been paid for years. What caused this to go from rumors to chaos? Purported landlord receipts. No confirmed documents or court filings. Just claims and pictures that spread quickly enough to seem real before anybody can stop them. The inference was not subtle. This wouldn't be if it were real. Regarding feelings, it would be about upkeep, a private agreement concealed by years of denial, marriage vows, and public appearances. And since money changers, everything changed after that concept went viral online. Way narratives are read, it turns into follow the trail, she added, and he agreed. Furthermore, even in cases when nothing has been verified, people tend to presume legitimacy when a landlord is mentioned. Then there was silence. Just distance, neither aggressive rejection nor instant confirmation. Furthermore, in situations like this, distance encourages conjecture rather than calming it. Why would years be spent paying rent? What is the reason for the rapid involvement of a landlord? And why does this seem more like infrastructure than drama? This is not a tale about accepting assertions. It tells the tale of why, compared to emotional accusations, financial ones are more damaging. How perception is altered by receipts. And why, once money enters the story, stillness turns become the most hazardous sound in the room. Since if the question is not what happened, even if some of this is true, it is the length of time that everyone was aware and remained silent. There were no records at the beginning of this story. It began with a claim. Jasmine Washington asserts that the support she says was present wasn't sporadic. It was long-term, organized, and constant. Month after month, year after year, the rent was purportedly paid. People's perceptions of everything else were instantly altered by that framing because consistency suggests preparation rather than impulsive behavior. Instead of screenshots of the conversation, the inclusion of purported third-party corroboration was what intensified it. Messages, not voice notes, but purported landlord receipts. Or at the very least, assertions that these receipts were disseminated after being shared in private. A significant difference: no court filings, no certified documents, and no confirmed claims from a landlord. No third-party validation. However, the word landlord has weight in rumor society. It implies impartiality. Records are implied. Additionally, it encourages viewers to presume validity before any verification has even taken place. The internet was immediately divided by that supposition. Rent payments spanning years, according to one side, would necessitate traceable transactions, checks, transfers, and payment records. They believe the allegation is too explicit to be made carelessly. The opposing viewpoint notes that specificity is not the same as truth and that unconfirmed receipts are constantly in circulation without ever being under examination. Kirk Frost takes center stage here, not because he verified anything, but rather because money reframes motivation. Emotions have no place in financial accusations. They are about systems. If there was support, it would indicate a long-term plan to remain silent. The claims were met with silence. No prompt refutation, no thorough rejection, and no recognition of the purported documents. Silence might indicate many different things in high-stakes circumstances. Legal counsel, a refusal to support a claim, or just patience as a tale develops. However, when money is allegedly involved, silence frequently reads as computation, whether fair or not, to the audience. Timing was another. These allegations were made in a media landscape that was already ready for financial responsibility. Viewers are increasingly dubious of public perceptions and more willing to listen to the money stories. Even without evidence, the rumor felt current because of such background. The credibility conundrum is another factor at work. Why? If the documents were authentic and reliable, were they not fully made public? Why even bring them up if they weren't powerful? Because it raises more questions than it does answers. That tension keeps the narrative moving. It's frequently forgotten how third-party stakes are changed by implication. When a landlord is brought up, the story shifts from a personal disagreement to an alleged financial trail that sparks conjecture over documents, taxes, and long-term secrecy areas where even unfounded rumors can harm one's reputation. The story isn't progressing on evidence at this time. The alignment of beliefs is progressing. After determining which version best matches their preconceived notions, people interpret silence. Via that perspective, there is no need for new information. The work is done by confirmation bias. The internet is divided as a result. Some people are awaiting verification, thinking that if there were actual receipts, they would show up. Others contend that absence does not equate to innocence and that powerful people stifle evidence. Both sides feel assured, but neither possesses conclusive facts. And assurance in the absence of proof is the most flammable fuel available. This leads to the next stage of the plot: pressure, not denial or proof. There is pressure on all parties to either intensify or prolong the story. The whole tone of the story changes when a rumor turns from being motivated by emotion to being motivated by money. Rumors of cheating come and go. Financial accusations are persistent. Thus, the assertions Jasmine Washington's creation landed in a different way. She wasn't talking about a secret relationship that ended or a moment of weakness. She was discussing a purported system rent that was purportedly paid over a long period of time frame. Systems also suggest intent. If rent has been paid for years, it indicates judgment, stability, and planning. It implies a scenario that was more logistical than emotional. Stability. After hearing it, people begin to inquire about how this was maintained, rather than whether this actually occurred. This is when the topic of motive comes up. The narrative that is going around the internet claims that financial support, it wouldn't have been about generosity if it had existed. Silence and control would have been key. Stability is rent. Rent eliminates urgency. Rent keeps a person afloat without causing obvious transactions pertaining to day-to-day living. Kirk Frost's name is at the center of the controversy because of that interpretation. Not because he verified anything, but because sustained funding would suggest a conscious attempt to handle a situation discreetly, away from family life and the public eye. Perception doesn't wait for evidence. Yet once more, none of this has been established. Traceability is another factor that makes financial accusations more severe. Feelings depart, not a paper trail. Money does. Audiences have an innate belief that records can refute anything that is untrue. And records may eventually come to light if it's true. The rumor persists just because of that notion. However, this traceability also leads to a dilemma. Why wouldn't receipts be made public and decisive if they were solid and indisputable? Furthermore, why even introduce them if they are ineffective or misunderstood? The story remains suspended because of that unresolved question. Silence becomes even more hazardous at this point. When sentimental rumors, silence can appear to be a sign of maturity. Silence is frequently interpreted as a legal tactic when financial accusations are made public. It is assumed that lawyers are engaged. They take documentation for granted, exist in some place, and even if nothing comes to pass, that presumption takes the tail from rumors to possible publicity. Scale is another layer that people tend to ignore. Rent payments for years is not a one-time choice. It's an ongoing commitment. Because of that scale, the accusation seems either very serious or very careless to make up. Reaction is heightened by both interpretations. Jasmine's proponents contend that precision is a sign of veracity. Specificity can be fabricated to seem convincing. According to skeptics, the audience is divided based on instinct rather than facts, and instinct is not always accurate. There is no denying that once money is claimed, the narrative shifts from discussing individual actions to focusing on morality and responsibility. Concerns are raised over long-term deceit, financial boundaries, and marital transparency. Even if they are false, such questions don't go away quickly. For this reason, financial accusations are frequently the most difficult to refute. To throw a shadow, they don't have to be confirmed. All they must do is sound credible enough to endure quiet. The story isn't progressing toward confirmation at this time. It is approaching pressure. There is pressure on those concerned to either outlive the story by exercising restraint or to escalate with evidence. Additionally, waiting generally results in residual doubt, even if restraint usually prevails in the end. The notion that receipts might exist persists even if they never appear. It gets mixed up with the background noise of the names. That's the silent harm that money rumors do. They damage reputations rather than destroy them. Money rumors do. They damage reputations rather than destroy them. This leads to the next chapter of the story, the use of silence. While everyone waits, who gains from it and who bears the burden? The accusation isn't the loudest thing in the room right now. It's the lack of evidence and the really thoughtful decision to allow that absence to persist. Silence becomes procedural rather than emotive when financial claims are brought up in public discourse. Attorneys become engaged. Options decrease. Counsel becomes more limited. And each possible course of action is considered not by how convincing it appears on the internet, but how long-lasting it is on record. Nobody is rushing for Kirk Frost because of this. Directly answering purported financial support allegations would necessitate being explicit about dates, amounts, and procedures. That level of detail, even in denial, can lead to scrutiny that was previously unavailable. When there is no publicly recognized paper trail, silence prevents the creation of one. The calculus is different but just as limited for Jasmine Washington. If there are purported receipts, making them publicly available immediately calls into doubt their authenticity, consent, and interpretation. Debunking is encouraged by partial documents. Complete documents invite legal consequences. Leverage is maintained by holding back, but credibility is delayed. This stage is known as stalemate. Both parties are aware of the risks associated with escalation. Providing evidence could put a stop to the discussion or spark a much more grave one. Saying nothing allows skepticism to persist while also allowing the story to mature. There is no clean option. Silence in this case therefore reads as legal strategy rather than evasion. One more reason the verification issue is that no proof has emerged. Even receipts that appear genuine may be contested. Was it a rent payment or something else entirely? Was it business-related or personal? Was it reimbursed? Documents that lack complete context may cause more confusion than they clarify, and misunderstanding frequently serves no one's interests. In the meanwhile, the audience makes assumptions to fill the void. People believe since there is no proof, it must be feeble. Others believe there is evidence, but it is being repressed. Silence fosters both interpretations. Facts are not necessary for either. Additionally, after camps are established, whatever evidence that does surface is filtered through prejudice. In any case, third-party exposure is another problem. Since landlords are not well known, allegations of their involvement raise the stakes. Including them in a viral story raises privacy and liability issues that may put a stop to everything. Verifying or disproving a landlord's involvement could result in collateral harm that goes well beyond the initial claim. This is the reason bystanders as well as the accused may benefit from silence. Time works in favor of the side that doesn't require urgency from a strategic perspective. Rumor cycles rely on novelty in the absence of deadlines or judicial filings. Engagement declines as the number of days without updates increases. Priority is given to new stories. Although it loses momentum, the claim does not vanish. The wager is that history demonstrates that many unsubstantiated financial claims eventually fade not because they are refuted, but rather because they are outlived. The lack of evidence becomes commonplace. The audience adjusts. Unresolved background noise replaces what earlier felt explosive. Silence, however, comes at a price, that it raises unanswered questions. It encourages hypothetical thinking. It permits the gossip to be later brought back to life when interest surges once more. Silence is not erasure, it is confinement. So why pick it? Since escalation generates documentation, documents generate risk. And risk management typically outperforms rebuttal in circumstances based on accusations rather than proof. The plot isn't progressing toward a reveal at this time. It's approaching resolution due to exhaustion. The question then becomes whose reputation can endure ambiguity longer and who can better handle waiting. This leads us to the last stage. When the noise subsides, what's left? And how reputations change following unsubstantiated accusations. A story like this settles rather than ends when it slows down without a resolution. And it's residual doubt, not truth, that settles. The aftermath isn't about establishing guilt or innocence. According to Kirk Frost, it has to do with association. Even unsubstantiated financial accusations stick to subsequent discussions once they are in the public domain. Appearances, interviews, irrelevant news, all pass via a silent remember when filter. Reputational degradation operates in this manner, in deposits, not in explosions. The price for Jasmine Washington is different. Claims run the risk of being reframed as attention-seeking, whether that is fair or not, in the absence of publicly verified evidence. As time goes on, viewers start to wonder why escalation ceased. Not because they want the truth, but because they want conclusion. Credibility becomes the negotiating chip when there is no closure. Rebuilding credibility is more difficult than regaining attention. The collateral impact is frequently overlooked. Families, spouses, kids, and business partners. The two people involved aren't the only ones implicated in financial rumors. They spread forth. By inference alone, people who never request to be included in the story are drawn in. That is the unseen price of the culture of receipts. The public's mental model is shaped by the possibility that papers exist, even if they never turn up. Additionally, once something is incorporated within that model, proving more energy is needed for it than for the initial claim. Normalization is another subtle effect. Audiences grow accustomed to ambiguity over time. Unresolved background noise that is neither urgent nor forgotten replaces the story. Names are not clarified by that normalization. It merely dulls the response. The rumor retains its potential to persist but loses its shock value. This is frequently regarded as a victory from a strategic standpoint. There was no spread of the fire. The story cooled. Life went on. However, moving past does not equate to moving on. Living with a footnote is what it entails. This explains why so many public personalities prefer to avoid conflict. It caps harm, not because it's satisfying. Records are produced by forceful rebuttals. Documents encourage examination. Statements can accomplish the work that silence does. However, not everything gets better with time. All it does is refocus attention. Ultimately, who bears the blogs and reaction outlets aren't the most expensive. It's the individuals whose names now have additional meaning. Context they couldn't completely remove and didn't choose. That is the actual result of unsubstantiated accusations. And it raises the last point, which is about the mechanism that transforms suggestion into impact, rather than rent, receipts, or silence. When a story like this reaches its climax, the most common inquiry is whether or not it is true. That is, why does it seem plausible? That's the unsettling reality of the whole situation. No authenticated receipts were found. Not a single landlord came forward. There was no financial trace verified. Nevertheless, the effect was genuine because money may alter perception without proof when it enters a rumor. All that is required is plausibility. The notion that rent could have been paid discreetly, reliably, and without being noticed was enough to change people's perceptions of Kirk Frost and their assessment of Jasmine Washington's claims. This has nothing to do with feelings. It had to do with infrastructure, as well as infrastructure because they imply long-term intent rather than transient errors. Accusations always land harder. This episode reveals how rumor culture functions in the era of receipts, not who paid what. After the paperwork is mentioned, the audience assumes legitimacy even in the absence of verification. Waiting turns suspicious, truth gets lost in interpretation, and silence turns into strategy. Nobody ever comes out on top in these situations. One side is plagued by persistent doubt, the other is plagued by doubts about their credibility, and the audience leaves with only impressions and no answers. Thus, this is the actual query. Should unsubstantiated claims ever be given this much weight? Does quiet harm people, or does it protect them? Furthermore, in a society that is fixated on receipts, who determines when proof is truly genuine? Leave a comment below with your thoughts. If you believe that rumors about money have a greater impact than rumors about cheating, share this. Because one thing is still evident when the noise subsides. Allegations are not necessary. Evidence of harm. All they need is time, cash, and quiet. Evidence of harm. All they need is time, cash, and quiet.